Hi, everybody. Welcome to Experts Dig In with Doggies for Dementia. I am Carmen DeValis and the founder of Doggies for Dementia, which is a nonprofit corporation where our mission is really to provide these really beautiful experiences for families and for everyone who's impacted by dementia. We do that with photography and by sharing stories. And of course, we bring the doggies in because I'm a doggy lover and we love doggies and it makes everything great. Welcome today, Amy Massingale, who I am thrilled about this recording tonight. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you, Carmen. It's good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. How cool is this? We met on Facebook and through Caregivers for Compromise. Yes?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I saw your posts and you saw mine and said, okay, we got to work together on something here.
Right.
And heard your story and I said, our viewers need to hear it. And that's it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about what's happened in your life since COVID.
What a year it's been.
What a year.
Yeah. What an interesting year. Wow. Just, it was a challenging year for me already before COVID hit. And it obviously got more so. My parents both had dementia. My dad has Alzheimer's and my mom had Lewy Body Dementia. He is 81. She was 78. She's recently passed. She passed in May. They both had it though, so I'm a double winner, I guess. It was an interesting time. We are originally from Texas. We're originally from Dallas and in the Austin area. They had lived in Texas for, almost 40 years, I guess. And around the time of they both kind of started to decline at the same time. And around the time that they did, we realized that they needed to be closer to family. And I'm living in Portland, Oregon, currently. So I moved them out here to be close to me a little over a year ago, which was a big culture change. They needed more assistance and more support. So I moved them into an assisted living facility that had a memory care division, memory care unit. And that was in May of last year. And then in March of this year, as we know, COVID hit and the lockdown started.
Wow. Let me ask it. Wow. So were your family, so your dad, Alzheimer's, your mother, Lewy Body, which is another form of dementia. There are many forms. That's one, and or two with Alzheimer's and then Lewy Body.
Right.
Were they both in memory care or?
They were both in memory care. Yes. Yeah. Both in memory care. He's more advanced. We actually didn't realize that she had Lewy Body. We knew she had some cognitive issues. She was diagnosed, or rather, it was the autopsy that revealed that it was Lewy Body. So we just recently found that out. It was Lewy Body and Alzheimer's for her. She had mixed. She had both. He was much more advanced, but they both had issues. So they lived together in an apartment in memory care. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. As if that's not enough, right, Amy? I mean, that's a lot right there, and moving, that's a lot, and having moved, and so from your perspective, being a daughter, right, watching your parents, and were you ever a caregiver before?
I was not. I was really, just this gave me the opportunity. I did help them and stayed with them for quite a while when they were in independent living in Dallas. So I would visit them and see that things were starting to slip and that they needed some support. And I would stay with them and help them and do a lot of the hands-on care. And I really wanted them at home with me. But I don't have, an accessible bathroom, and I have some challenges with my house, and I work, and I've got kids. And so there were challenges there, as much as I wanted them close.
Yeah, I hear sometimes comments like, well, if families aren't happy with long-term care, however the community might be, whether it's memory care, assisted living, what have you, then they could just take them home, as if that's just an easy peasy thing to do
Right.
without thinking about all that needs to go into the actual care of someone with dementia. And then
Right.
Lewy body on top of it, I understand her diagnosis wasn't until autopsy, which isn't that uncommon, by the way.
Right. Right.
But is a whole different, there are like many different symptoms and presentations. So it's a lot to learn and get ready for.
Yes.
Yeah, so now this is when you really need to put your hero, your cape on,
Yeah.
Amy. Yeah, so we're in October now, but so back
Right.
in March then, right, with the
Right.
COVID. Tell me what
Right.
happened then. So your parents are in memory care in Oregon.
They're in memory care. They're in Oregon. They're, you know, I mean, adjusting, I'd say pretty well. And I was over at their apartment or in their room, you know, every day, at least almost every day, at least once a day. So I really, my goal with that is because I wanted to be with them or have them home with me. I wanted, and I wasn't able to, I wanted to bring home to them as much as I could. I was, you know, I'm familiar, and we really loved each other. So I wanted to let them know in any way that I could that they weren't abandoned, that they were, that I was in it with them. I wanted to be in it with them. And so I was over, I had meals with them. We did activities together. We went out to church once a week. We did, you know, I was very involved. I was very involved.
Yeah. Now, I'm assuming that changed dramatically in March. That's about the time of the lockdown, yes?
I want to say it was March 13th, maybe, right around there, 13th, 14th. I've got a journal. I kept a journal
Yeah. Oh,
throughout
you did?
this.
Good.
I did, because it just was so unbelievable. I felt like I was living in a sci-fi movie, you know?
I
It just
know.
didn't
I
feel real.
know. Yeah, I
So,
still do. I wake up every morning and go, is this just a bad dream? Because
right,
I just can't fathom it.
right.
But so
It's
take us back then to March 13th. So that day.
that day, I think maybe that day or the day before, I started to notice that things were changing. I showed up like I normally do at the facility. I parked. I went to the front door to go in, and I was used to. I knew everybody. They knew me. It was a small, pretty small, cozy place, and I was used to being able to come and go and kind of have free reign. And you know, it was their home, and in a way, it was my home away from home.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a sign on the door that said, you know, visitors were discouraged. It started with discouraged, and I went in anyway, and noticed that people were being a little more vigilant, a little worried. But I went into their apartment. The day that I went, the next day, though, there was a big pink sign that said "Stop," and asked if, you know, you had traveled out of the country, if, you know, you'd had a temperature, had any symptoms. And I went ahead and went in, and the executive director was there, and they strongly discouraged me from coming in, and I was torn because I didn't want to jeopardize the health of my parents or of anybody else that lived there. But I felt so compelled to see my parents, and it was something that I had done so much of. And so they told me at the
Yeah.
time, you know, it's only essential visitors. And I said, well, I'm essential.
Yeah.
And they ended up letting me in. But I had a feeling in the pit of my stomach that the next day I wouldn't be able to get in.
Yeah. Oh my
That it was
goodness. Yeah. And
Yeah,
how would you ever explain that to your parents?
and I
Yeah.
wouldn't
And
be able to, right?
yeah. Oh boy. And that word essential is just used so much. And families will say we are essential, just like
Right,
you're saying. And then the question of, well, let's define essential, because some communities define it differently and families
right,
aren't deemed essential,
right,
which for any family that's coming in, especially as much as you and many do, you know, are
right,
quite often and are there for meals and such, to say they're not essential. It's like, are you kidding? Because
right,
you
right.
know, we're
And I should,
walking, they're doing a
yes,
lot.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And I should add too, my parent, this is, you know, an important piece of this is both my parents were put on hospice a month before lockdown started. They were both put on hospice service. So they were
Uh,
um, that just increased my desire to be with them every waking minute that I could. I knew my time was limited.
Mhm.
Our time was limited, and I didn't want to miss a second of it, not a second. And I didn't want them to ever feel at the very end that that they had been abandoned.
Of course. Oh, yeah. What worse feeling? I don't know. The lack of love, right?
Right,
Um, yeah. And then, so even so, going in, then the thought is, I mean, we're just learning about this disease and how it's
right,
transmitted and just how
right,
easily it is communicated around a community, and especially the elderly are particularly vulnerable
right.
for severe illness if they do get it. And then the thought of going in too is like, oh my gosh, there's
Yeah,
a risk there too.
there's a risk
And
there, right?
there's a risk.
It was
Yeah,
eerie. I went in, I was the only family member. I was the only visitor. That one day that I went in, I felt it felt um, I didn't know what the right thing to do was. That my heart was telling me one thing, but rationally, I was trying to be respectful and be cautious and
right.
all of those things. But my heart so strongly was wanting to be there and be with my parents,
Yeah,
very very close to my parents, and I really yeah, I didn't want to be apart.
yeah. I don't, yeah, I can understand that. Yeah, and in honesty, a lot of this has come out since, and that it's always been there, but it sounds like it's an emotional need, and oh well, you just want to be there, and that's really good. But the thing of it is, the dangers and the physical damage and the emotional damage for everyone involved, but namely those that have dementia, the elderly, that isolation is
Right,
deadly. I mean, no, nothing short of deadly, right? And I'm not saying that to be
right.
dramatist or something, but that's exactly how it is. So that
You're
pull to you is both ways. It's,
you're absolutely right. And it was
yeah,
my mom had a lot of agitation. At the end, she had a lot of agitation, and I was kind of her safe person. So she was almost, obsessed with me. I mean, I got a lot of phone calls from her during the day. She wanted me with her. Um, I was her touchstone. I was a security for her, and
yeah,
I noticed that they would eat better when I was there. They just had a really strong need for security and familiarity. Uh,
right.
and
Ugh,
so she was so reliant on me. I didn't know I I didn't know how that would go if we were not able to be together. It was unimaginable, really.
unimaginable. It's,
Right,
yeah, yeah, like the worst nightmare, right?
right,
Which then happened. Yes.
right.
So what
Which
happened? Yeah, what happened then?
yeah. So I called my sister. I luckily, my sister and I are close. We are both we're very much in alignment, which is fortunate because that's not always the case with families.
Right.
She's great. She's the power of attorney. I've kind of acted more like the health care proxy. So I called my sister and said, I have a bad feeling. I just have a bad feeling about this, and I'm afraid that I'm not going to be able to get them out, or that it'll be difficult to get them out. I would like to bring them home
Hmm.
to my house, and at least until this passes, at least until we, you know, get out of the woods a little bit. And it was that I wanted to protect them from COVID. I wanted to protect them from being in an environment where there was a likelihood that they could contract it. And then I wanted to also just have the security of being close and being able to be more hands-on in their care. That was another
Yeah.
thing, is I provided so much oversight and was so involved in the making sure that they were getting quality care that I couldn't imagine not having eyes on. I
Yeah.
just imagine that. Um,
Yeah. I feel fairly certain that unless people have actually been caregivers for someone or a family member for someone in long-term care, how important their presence is and what they're doing to help and keep people safe and keep the, like you said, to eating, to keep the
Yeah,
appetite up, and all these things that are so important. And
it's so important. It's so
yeah,
important.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you're faced with a dilemma. What did you do?
So yeah, so she, to her credit, said, "Okay, well, let's think this through a little bit. But if you really feel strongly, I support you." And I said, I'll bring them home. I know a couple of private caregivers that could help me out while I'm working, that could come by the house. They were on hospice service, of course, so that was an immense. Hospice was
Mhm.
a godsend, really,
Yeah.
in this situation, because I was able to get daily visits from a CNA. So I called hospice. I said, here's what I'm thinking about doing. The virus has got me nervous. I'd like for my parents to come visit for an extended visit at my house, and we'll see how it goes. Is that something that you can set up service for at home? And they said, we can work in any structure, as we're there to support you, and if you're at home, we can come to your home as well. So I put them in the car and brought them home. And we're talking, they were both in wheelchairs, so that was challenging. That was challenging,
Yeah.
and
I can't imagine the thoughts going through your head on that drive home. I'm just
it's
trying to imagine that, like, there's so much you don't know and there's so
didn't.
much you do know, but
Yep. Yeah, we had
yeah.
to arrange to get hospital beds, sent. They were both in hospital beds. So there were equipment needs. There were a lot of logistical things we had to think about. And I don't have an accessible bathroom. I have a very small house. Um, Beds were set up in my living room, right, in the middle. I ended up getting a privacy screen and putting a privacy screen up, but they were in the living room. And it kind of reminded me of the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, where you see the grandparents that are in the living room with the two sets. That
Yeah.
a little bit like that. It was
Yeah.
that they were, in a way, as scared as I was, and as anxious and as nervous as I was about what is tomorrow going to be, and what do I do tomorrow, and how do I provide for them. I will say that first night that they were here, I slept so well, because everybody I loved was under my wing,
Well,
so
that's beautiful. Yeah. And how brave, because as a nurse practitioner, when I would counsel families on making a move, whether it's similar to yours or from community to community, you just don't
yeah,
know how people will respond to a different environment. You just don't know. And because,
yeah,
the insight and judgment with dementia is impaired, and how they view things is unpredictable.
yeah,
And yeah, and yeah, so that was very,
yeah,
very, very courageous.
yeah. Thank you. I mean, I was able
Yeah.
to go back the next day and get some clothes and some other items, and they at the time at the facility, they were just learning. I mean, we were all trying to figure out what was going on and trying to
Yep.
do the best that we could to keep people safe, and continue to go forward. And so they were great. I came in, I got stuff, I got clothes, I got some other items, and I said, this is indefinite. I don't know,
Mhm.
what's going to happen, and they supported that. So
Right. Well, that
that's
was
for.
really, yeah,
Mhm.
very. So this is like you're learning about the lockdown, potential lockdown, and you're deciding all of this right then.
Right,
Okay,
right.
we're going to my house then.
We're going to
Wow.
my house. Yeah. I can be an impulsive person. It's I was trying to temper it with what is best for them and what's best for our family, and not let just emotion, take over and run wild.
Yeah.
Having hospice and having the support that I had made all the difference. Having my sister's support made all the difference.
Oh, yeah.
Having my husband's support and my kids. I have a 15-year-old and a 14-year-old, and they rallied. They
Yeah.
rallied. There were hard moments, and they didn't have all my attention. I told them at work what the situation was. They were supportive.
Oh,
I'm blessed to have some really good people in my life that supported this decision, because it was difficult. It was
right.
challenging.
Right. And at the time, you have no idea what this is going to really I mean, I remember hearing reports because I was actually in the hospital in March, and I'm hearing this, like, I really need to get home. And,
Yeah.
but I kept hearing things like for instance, Texas, where I live, we're not going to peak till July or August. We're in March. And I'm thinking, what? No way.
Hey, I know.
What? And
I
I'm
know.
watching the news and what's happening in New York City and in other countries. And it
Yeah.
couldn't, even
Yeah.
in my medical brain, I couldn't wrap my head around it. And could you
Mm-mm.
imagine how long? Because I would think if I were you, my thought would be probably 3 or 4 weeks. This will blow over a little bit. We'll know a little bit better about it. And
Yep.
then they can go back home and we can resume our normal routine.
That's exactly right. That's
Yeah, but it
exactly
didn't happen that way, Amy.
No,
How far
no,
from that can we get?
not quite like that. Not quite like that. No.
No,
So
no. So how long were they at home with you then?
they were home uh all about a month they were here. They were here. I worked home. Obviously, so I'm in, my bedroom or another room trying to work. I would have the CNA from hospice that would come, who was an angel, just an absolute angel. She would come and give care. My mom's, dementia was accelerating. It was increasing. Her decline, I should say. I mean, she started to really um, escalate, and so her needs increased. It got very challenging. We ended up having two people that really had to be there, at one time. So, but whereas before we could have one caregiver kind of for both of them, it really required. She was bedbound. It required people to, assist
Wow.
her in that way. Yeah.
Wow.
So. I had
Oh,
gotten equipment that I needed. I had gotten bars in for the bathroom, for the toilet, and some other things like that, a toilet riser, a number of things for my dad. But it got to where my mom's needs really, as the decline was going on, it just we needed a lot of
yeah.
care. Um,
Yeah.
so I'm juggling a lot. I'm juggling kids. I'm juggling work. I'm juggling, being there. Hands-on caregiver as well. I did all the overnights by myself. I did, all the time from the time the CNA or the caregiver left in the afternoon. I was on during the day, and I was always the second set of hands, when they needed that. So it was a lot. It was a lot.
That's a lot. So within that burden piece, was there anything that happened that was not necessarily a surprise, but something that was like the opposite, the pendulum swings to something that was unexpected, but that was really like good? You know?
Yes, actually, absolutely. Um, my dad had a comeback. My dad was, like I said, they were both on hospice. He was diagnosed, he was severely malnourished when I took him out of the place where they were. He was very thin and had not really been eating very well. And he got home with me, and I was able to cook all his favorites. He had kind of lost interest in food, to a large degree.
Yeah.
But I knew the kind of food that he loved. He loves Southern food. He loves, spicy food. He loves comfort foods. And I loved being able to cook for him. I loved being able to share
Mm.
every meal with him. And he really had more moments of clarity. He was upbeat more. He was awake more. He was engaged more. The caregivers and the hospice CNA that would come to help out just said, "This is amazing. George has done a 180. He's really made a comeback." He has since come off hospice. He's been fired. He was discharged. So that was
Yeah.
absolutely an unexpected, really positive thing that happened.
Yeah. And that time for you to be able to spend that with him as he's improving and witnessing it. And
Witnessing it.
yeah, and I've spoken with so many families who, even if it's 30 seconds, a minute of
Yeah.
lucidity or of understanding, it just means the world. And it's like
Means
that
everything.
memory just sticks in their heart and never goes away. And they go, yeah, there was really hard and I didn't sleep. And there was this one time though, and they'll like go
Yeah.
back to that one memory of when there was a connection, that they were
Oh,
like a
there was
presence.
there were some beautiful, beautiful moments. I mean, I saw their relationship up close, and saw how the depth of the love they had for each other, and how unchanged that was by the dementia.
Mm.
If anything, it was almost more pure. It was unfiltered, kind of,
Uh-huh.
so I
What?
got to see that. It's so inspiring to me to see the kind of love that they had for one another. My mom, my birthday fell, it was March 31st. So we were about 2 weeks in at that point, and she remembered my birthday. She was the first person to wish me a happy birthday that morning.
Really?
Yeah, I was over the
Wow.
over the moon. I really wasn't expecting it, and it was a moment of clarity for sure. Um,
Wow.
it was so
That's a huge deal right there. And when thinking about your parents' love, what a great lesson for all of us, what's really at the core of everything.
yeah,
Yeah, right there. It's love. And there was enough fear going around. We need
yeah,
that love piece was there. And
yeah.
yeah.
It
So
was amazing.
well, I love that. Not to use love again, but I really, that's
No,
is just like,
it
yeah.
was something else. It was something to behold. It really
Yeah.
was. It really, really
Yeah.
was. And we did church together. We had, they were my church buddies. I took them to church almost every Sunday. We had a great church that was really supportive, and loved them very much, and very accepting. And
Ah,
they moved their services online. So Easter Sunday, as you know, fell, um,
yes.
and we watched it on TV. We streamed the service, and played hymns all day. We played all the old hymns and all the hymns that they loved, and
Hmm.
that was a beautiful day because we were
Yeah.
together.
Yeah. And so a month, they're at home with you a month,
With me for
and um, then
yeah, and then I started to, as this wore on, as we saw that it really, there was no immediate end in sight, to COVID. I really started to get nervous that I could get sick, and that if I did, we would really be in a predicament. That I didn't really have a backup plan. I mean,
yeah.
I was afraid that if I got sick, not only would I not be able to care for them, but that some of the caregivers, I have wonderful angels that came and helped me. Were
Hmm.
two or three of them that were have become friends since then, but that they probably wouldn't be able to come in, and work and help
Right.
out. They have small children at home. That so
Yeah. And you're the glue holding it all together.
yeah, so
Yeah.
I thought this is not sustainable over the long haul without a different, probably different house, a different setup. And of course, my mom's needs, were really getting pretty intense. And
Yeah.
so my sister said, you've done the kind of just the unimaginable, and you've tried, and you've given it your best. I think though, for however long this is going to go, this maybe is not the long-term
Hmm.
solution. Um, and I think that was right. I mean, I didn't want to get sick one day and then suddenly that day not have. I mean, it just wasn't an option to not have a plan B for them, for their.
Yeah. I can so see that, and it's not something that was in the forefront of my
Right.
thoughts actually, what it is like for the primary caregiver in a home, and well, what would happen if you can't. It's like being
Right.
a single parent almost, and
Right.
that you're the one, and in your case you're really orchestrating quite quite a situation to keep everybody happy and healthy, and
Right. Right.
yeah, what a year of big decisions for
So
you.
what a year. I know. So
Like
we we looked
life
around for new
life
care.
altering decisions, yeah? I mean,
No
yeah.
doubt. No doubt, life altering. I mean, life and death. Such, you
Yeah.
know, I mean,
And
this
not
is
knowing if you're making the right choice or not. I mean,
never knowing, just doing a lot
no.
of praying,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
a lot. So,
Right. Yeah. So sorry, I interrupted you. I
oh,
apologize. You said you
no,
started looking around
for for a new care home for them, and I knew that I wanted, or we wanted, I should say, you know, something that was smaller, more home-like, really family-like, residential. Really, we looked and we found a great place. It's about 7 minutes from my house, so it's
for.
really, yeah, it's really close. It feels like an
Yeah.
extension of home,
Uh-huh.
um, and you know that's a blessing. There have been many blessings in all of this, and that was a big one.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, there are options. Again, I think that's something some families don't know either till they're in the midst of it, right? There are the really large places where some people really bloom, and then there are
Right.
very small places, even 7 or fewer, or up towards I think like 14, depending on
Yeah.
licensure and state.
Right.
And they all supply different kinds of needs. And
Right.
so being close to home and then smaller, I imagine that changed how the lockdown situation was also.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
risks are different.
The risks are different, right? Exactly right. And this is a family owned place, which I have come to really appreciate, rather than, you know, I mean, you know, there are good ones everywhere, and not so good ones, but I tend to prefer not corporate owned, the more family
Yeah.
owned.
And different
Yeah.
decision making, where when you're in a large communities, and I'm not going to say good or bad, is because there's benefits and then there's
Right.
other not so much. But one of
Right.
those is that no matter how loving and warm and how much that executive director or nursing staff or someone want to help and to be there for you and look at it individualized, they are governed by certain corporate
That's exactly
comes
right.
down that they cannot, and they
That's
want
right.
to, even if they really really want to, they
Even if they
cannot.
really,
And
yeah.
yeah, and I know because I know people, I've been in that world, that you go home and you look at the mirror and go, what
Yeah.
happened today?
Yeah.
Because it is you're just governed by different rules that
That's right.
beyond what you want. But in personal care homes is different.
It's different. I
Yeah.
agree. Yeah, this is I think 10, 9 or 10 is what they have, and it's set up like a home. It's actually just a very, very large, newer home, and kind of there's a central kitchen and dining area and common area, and then the rooms are off the hallway. Like it's a good setup too, and care is one-on-one, a little more one-on-one, and that's been really nice.
Yeah. And your
Yeah.
father's still there.
He's still there. He's still there.
Yeah.
Right. Uh,
Yeah. Well, I have a really big question for you. This has been in my heart as I'm listening to family stories, because I've been on some of the Facebook pages and I've talked to people, and I just, the seeing what's happening to their family members inside communities. And again, not to lay blame, we are all learning what we need to know. However,
right.
I think, let's see, I just saw an interview, it was with Charles Camasey, and he talked about how the utilitarian view, essentially we take all of our values and we lump it and choose the one that we have some control over and that we can manage. And in the case of with COVID-19 and a pandemic, we are looking at physical care. How do we keep this vulnerable population safe? And certainly in the case of communities,
Right.
keep it from spreading. And then their businesses, they're like, oh boy, we don't want to get the word out that we have COVID here at all, and
Right.
the strictness of it. And as a family member, what do you recommend for people who are maybe the ability to pack up the car, take their mom and dad home that day? That's not they can't do that right now, or there's a lot of factors, right? And so
Right.
what do you think? What's the biggest thing that you take home that you could help someone who's in this situation?
Yeah. you know,
This is just a little question for you, Amy.
just
It's huge, right?
some minor details.
Yeah. If we could just solve this big problem of life, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm interested in from your experience. You know,
Yeah.
I know we all have our various opinions, and it's the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, I mean, when you say take home, do you mean take away, or do you mean what you know, my takeaway from it, or
Yeah, so our
yeah,
audience are family caregivers for the most
yeah,
part, as well as others who might become, or even some professional
yeah,
caregivers, and they're learning about what's this really like from various point of views. And from the family point of view, then you saw the lockdown, you know what's happening. I know you've watched and you've seen what's happening for
uh,
residents.
it's breaking my heart. I would not have been able to see them in the old place. I was able to a little bit more in the newer place, primarily because my mom was on hospice, or my mom was end of life, and was able to do that. There was more flexibility, like we talked about, because of the nature of the care home.
Right.
And now I'm able to see my dad because at window visits, and it's a one level, and there's a courtyard. The way that the old place was structured, I wouldn't have even been able to do window visits.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, the take home from, and I see, and I'm friends with the people that they, you know, the other residents become, it's one like large family, and
At the
you know,
first home, at the first community,
yeah,
yeah.
and becoming that way at the second home, you know, you just become
Mhm.
you become friends, you become attached. And I know that some of the people at the other care home and aren't having anybody come at all.
No.
And
And
it is,
in some places they've been in their rooms for months, eating meals, no
so
contact with
that's what boggles my mind. And when you say, you're right, you know, you say this is utilitarian, it's not sustainable. It was something that I can imagine was a reaction in the moment to let's keep people safe, and I think came from good intentions,
Mhm.
absolutely, to keep this vulnerable population safe. But it's not sustainable for the long
Right.
haul. There's no way that isolation can be.
No.
You need it.
No. I mean, isn't that like the worst punishment for prisoners
I was just
is
gonna say, I
solitary
mean,
solitary
yeah,
isolation. And
solitary confinement.
yeah,
Mhm.
it is certainly, you're right, it came from a place of caring, and we're looking at the physical, and it's a place of history, meaning this is what we've done and it worked, but
Right.
never for that long was it
Yeah.
ever intended. But then what do you do? And it's a scrambling piece of it. And
Yeah, and it was already, you know, this was a problem, a real problem in long-term care before COVID even hit. I mean, there were already issues of, I think, people feeling lonely and isolated and kind of, you know,
mhm.
cut off, right?
Oh
And
yeah,
yeah, and
that was
so
just worse.
it
Yeah.
was kind of a perfect storm. Unfortunately, it
Hmm.
just was. I had a bad feeling that was going to happen for some people, and it's gone on. It's just gone on so long. I'm shocked. I'm shocked
Yeah.
that there, you know, isn't a bigger push even to get essential caregiver designation for family members. I mean,
Yeah.
we're essential.
Oh, there's no doubt. And I think that a lot of that, the thinking that it's not essential, is just lack of knowing.
I think
It's
so.
ignorance to the facts of what it's really like, which I get. If you haven't done it, you might not know.
Right.
And that's part of why we're working so hard to raise awareness. And I know you're involved in that too. And
Oh, it's
it's
huge. I mean, even today, I saw my dad today. I went up to cut his toenails. I mean, that's just an example for you. They don't, that's a service that they don't do that there. It's
mhm,
I
which isn't
I
unusual. That's
yeah,
not unusual. That's
not unusual at all. That's
mhm,
quite common, and there
yes.
aren't podiatrists or other professionals that are really even able to get in because of COVID.
Mhm.
So, you know, I went up and did
Yeah.
that, and I noticed that he seemed to be in pain, that he wasn't feeling good. He was he was grouchy, grumpy, and I know from having lived with him, you know, that
Yeah.
that's how it manifests when he's in pain. That's what happens. And I called it to their attention, and they said, I wondered, and do you think maybe that it's time to call his doctor for something stronger, or change the pain medicine, or so they were, but having my eyes on it made all the difference, and, and having the history of
Yeah.
knowing my dad, I know my dad, and I said, he's hurting.
Mm-hmm.
So I, I shudder to think how many people are in pain.
Mm-hmm.
Not only like physical pain, of course, there's an emotional pain right now.
Mm-hmm.
The physical pain too, we're not getting that second set of eyes. We're not getting the familiar, family or caregiver that really knows that person and
Yeah.
knows and
Yes.
can recognize those signs and can intervene and advocate on their behalf.
Mm-hmm.
I,
Yeah. And you're really, really right about that. I mean, even in the clinic space, families would come to me and they say, what do you think? What you see is more important. And I said, well, first and foremost, you are the expert on
yeah,
your mom or your dad. You know all
right.
those little things that I wouldn't know in my
Yeah,
20-minute visit. And
right,
so rely on you to tell me I'll ask the questions, you tell me, and then
right,
offer whatever. And because it's families that know, and
right.
they have a history. They're recognizing things.
They are.
Uh,
Yeah,
yeah. So for families that are, their loved ones are still in communities and they're not able to visit, and as we said, we've been watching their stories and the tragedies, and I don't know. Do you have any words of wisdom for them, ways to cope, or I mean, I know we have found advocacy as a way to help cope, right? I mean, that's what we're
yeah,
here doing, and for one thing, and for one part of it anyway. And
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, there are worlds of things. I was just wondering from your standpoint.
yeah,
You talk to your friends that are in the communities where your parents were. Um,
yeah. It's a great question. I mean, I believe that families have a a primal need to be together. Actually, I really believe that. I think being apart it's tearing people up. It's so hard on. I mean, it's hard on the loved ones. Those of us that aren't, and are experiencing some mental health and some other issues. I think
yeah.
what we're faced with is an opportunity to be as creative and as what's the word, motivated and compelled and creative as we can possibly be, as we've ever been in our lives. I did the
Mhm.
music memory. I did, for Mother's Day, I had musicians outside the window serenade my mom, and the other residents enjoyed it too. They were able to look out the window. I mean, a lot of people got joy from that. I know I've heard people bring their dogs up and outside as they're able to do window visits. They're bringing a dog, or they're bringing their kids or toddlers or somebody playing outside, so that
Yes.
families are able to look outside and at least still see and have some joy from that experience. So, I mean,
Mhm.
that would be my my advice would be to know
Yeah.
that it's natural that you feel this connection, that you feel this desire, that it is the way it's meant to be, is that we are meant to be together. We are meant to be together,
Oh,
and until we can
yeah.
be, I think we have to find how we can be together, and how we can create experiences and experiences of joy in any way that we can for these residents and for our
Yeah.
families. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, it's a very basic spiritual need, which, is like for our survival, and that love and connection to others, connection to nature,
Yeah,
even to oneself, and that spending that time and I'm, like for family members, like what are you doing to take care of yourself too?
that's right.
And when you're caregiving and you're running to a place and standing outside the window and waiting for that one visit, and maybe they'll come to the window, maybe they won't, and
Right.
that's your world is wrapped up in that, right?
Yes.
And will they recognize you with the mask, because you have to, and you've got to be so far apart. You're not allowed to hug, you're not allowed to touch them. And I
And
read
touch
a
is so important. Touch is so
Oh,
important.
so important. And, I even heard a story of a gal who they were visiting and they kept their distance, and the dad's shoe was not on right, and he was kind of falling a little bit. It wasn't stable, and he's just worried. And I think that it was the granddaughter who reached underneath, and fixed the shoe, just
Mhm.
like that, and that they were forbid visitation from then on because they disobeyed the rules, which just blew my mind. And
I saw that same
did you
story. I don't.
see that? I
Mhm.
can't get that out of my heart. It was just it just blew me away. And like, what possible support can we provide when that is someone's reality? And they got that email saying you cannot visit anymore. What? I mean, it's unfathomable. And I think that's part of the value too. And we say what we will about social media, I mean, we
Yeah,
use it to do what some really, really good too.
yeah,
And
yeah,
the pages where families can go on and share their stories and support one another is
yeah,
their way of connecting with like-minded people who can
yeah.
understand. I
That
think that is so important
That's so
too.
important. You can share ideas. You can share those creative ideas. You can share what worked for you, or you can share,
Yeah.
what I think it's so important to share. All the states and all the facilities they're left to their own devices here with this, right? So they're interpreting it kind of as they see fit for their particular, community, right?
Right.
And and so I think it's important to share. Well, this is what's happening in mine, and this is, we've got to disclose what's going on because.
Oh, it is so
It's
different. It is so
it's so
different, even
different,
from down the street, in places.
so
And I think,
different.
the decision making, a lot of that is from a fear-based place of fear and protection. So fierce for
It
the
is.
community and for the residents too, but as the community as a whole, because they're also, their job is to take care of everybody,
Yeah,
and their staff. And
yeah,
so it's created this really confusing environment for families who
yeah.
are
It,
watching through the window.
it's incredible, and I keep thinking to myself, how did we how did we lose our rights in all this? Like, I understand the desire to protect and to be careful and be cautious, and I
Hmm.
can appreciate that, and
Yeah.
I don't want to be the one getting anybody sick. I don't want to be, I don't want that for anybody. Um, but how in all of this effort did we lose our basic human rights? Did we lose ours, and did our loved ones lose theirs? How did that
Oh,
happen?
yeah.
That we lost
How
our rights?
indeed. Yeah, I think because we did what we knew best, and I say we, I meant all of us as a
Right,
society. We did what we knew best to do from the get-go, and then
right.
not having any experience in this, and not really quite knowing how to deal with it. And two, we weren't the only two, Amy, that were scratching our heads going, what the heck? What's
Yeah,
going on here?
yeah.
And that's from the top down, and then if we're kind of like, we're already behind the curve with it,
Hmm.
how are we going
We
to
are
manage this?
behind the curve.
Right. And then to stand up and go, wait a second, if we isolate these people for more than X amount of time, or even a day is harmful, if we continue
Right.
that, we're going to still lose people. And we're going to lose them in a cruel, horrible way.
In
And not
a
just
terrible
that,
way.
those families are going to suffer also. And the PTSD that's going to come out of this, I can't even,
I can't even imagine.
the
But
trauma for them. And
you're right.
so,
I know that
and
last month with my mom, it was a hard month anyway. I mean, she was declining. It was, gonna happen. But she would have suffered so much more had she
mhm.
been isolated and abandoned. Essentially, she
Oh,
would not have understood with the dementia. She wouldn't have ever understood why.
mm,
It's in the moment for her, right? So
right.
she would have felt abandoned. She used to say to me every time I left their apartment, "Now, Amy, now, don't forget about us.
Mhm.
Don't
Yeah.
forget about us." It was her greatest fear, and you
Yeah.
know,
Oh, yeah. And a lot of people feel exactly that. They've been forgotten about, or they're in prison. And the other piece is they see people with masks all the time, which is incredibly frightening
right,
anyway. But then
right,
on top of dementia, and as I said, back in April, I had surgery. I was in the hospital for a little while, and not for long though. But
mm,
even in those 3 days, and recovering and being in pain, and it was a cancer thing. So it was like, okay, what
Oh,
now? But I'm fine. Thank
good.
God I'm fine. But at the time, there's a lot of things, and I was so alone.
Yeah.
No visitors, no family, no anything, and everyone who came into the room were in a hurry
Yeah.
because they were doing their best to take care of people, and they had this
Yeah.
full stuff on, mask. I didn't see a human face the whole time, nor was there any touch and I have a hard time hearing, so I'm watching, there's no lips to read, and I thought,
Oh,
oh
no.
my goodness, what is this like for
Mhm.
someone with dementia? And that was 2 or 3 days, and I couldn't wait to get out.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
felt the impact from that. I cannot even, I mean, the damage is really, I can't even put that into words.
Damage is real. I mean, the damage is real. It is,
Yeah.
worse than I think COVID itself.
Oh,
I
yeah.
I really, I do. I mean, I don't say that lightly. I
Yeah.
know it's horrible, but when were they ever given the option of, okay, you can take your chances, or I mean, there was no discussion around that. There was no. I mean, honestly, I know what I would choose.
Mm-hmm.
I know what I would choose. So
Yeah, and
I
I believe most families, if given the choice, say, okay, either you don't see them and they're isolated, and we're doing the best we can. We got 6 staff too.
hmm
We're short staff for a lot of the
a very
time.
short staff. It's
Very
very,
short
yeah,
staff. If someone's sniffling, they can't come to work till COVID. We're running on fumes here. We're trying to,
right.
but everybody's in the room. Nobody comes out, and it's going to stay that way, or you can come in and risk that COVID can enter the building and you might lose your loved one from COVID,
hmm
or and others. What
And
if,
yeah,
and I believe most families would say, you know what, at least I'm there with them.
I think so too.
And
Yeah, I had made my mom. I had promised them at when the hospice started. I said, I all I can tell you is I am here with you. You're not going to go through this alone. There
mhm.
is no way on my watch you are going through the dying process
Oh
alone.
yeah, what
It's
bigger
not going to.
pain than abandonment,
No, and
feel
I
abandoned.
couldn't shake that I had made that promise, and
Mhm.
I couldn't go back on that, so
Mhm.
I brace my heart for the families that have not that have had to break
Yeah.
that have had to break
Right.
that promise, right? So
Right. Because that's a
it's just
that's a promise inherent. If you don't say it out loud, it is still there. I'm here. I'm not. Nothing's
absolutely
going to stop me. I'm
right,
here.
right,
But it
and
has, and it's beyond their power.
it's beyond their power.
Yeah. For
It
right
is
now. For right now, Amy.
right now. That's right, Carmen.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah. I'm just really not giving up on that. And I'm thinking like we're going to do our best to raise awareness and things. And then, I'm just sitting around at dinner and I just going to go, then what? So
Yeah,
people know, then what? What are we going to
yeah,
do about that? Who do I even call? Who really needs to hear this? Who can make a difference? Or is
and
it
that's
all of
yeah,
us a number?
yeah,
All in number together. I don't know. I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah.
Um,
I'm
but
not
I
sure, but
will.
yeah, it's not. It was such a short-term solution that it's just not It's just not.
No.
It's sustainable. It should not have gone on, like you said. Past a day would have
Yeah.
been hard.
Well, I can't wait to come on this program and talk with you and go, look, Amy, this is what's happening. And look, now
We have.
all together, we've all done something and it's
Agree.
changed
I
because
agree.
after COVID, there will be something else. If not COVID again, this is not a one-time thing. There's always something happening.
Right.
And we got to get ahead of that curve. And because I
Yeah.
just I can't bear this happening. I
Yeah.
can't believe this happening in our world. And what way do we show
Yeah.
our elders that we value them? And
Absolutely.
really,
And
when did their lives not become valuable?
our lives not in any. Yeah. Any life is valuable and viable. And the irony to me is that of all the people that could really help us during a pandemic are people who have lived through the Depression and, I mean, world wars, and that have,
Yeah.
shown resilience and have been through some really serious crises in their
Hmm.
own lives, could offer so much wisdom to us, could offer so much
Yeah.
support. And yet they're the very ones that we're cut off from.
Hmm.
So it's,
Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah, again, I cannot wait till we can come on and talk about what's changed.
And it
And
will change.
because, oh yeah, I am just not, I'm not giving up.
It's
And
not, and it's
yeah,
good. It's the words getting out. I think people are getting fed up, and I think we're getting stronger. We're
oh
getting
yeah,
stronger.
oh, definitely. We're not alone in this. And not at all. And I think is that big question, like who really needs to hear this? Who can make change? Who can
That's right.
change this? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But we are right now. So,
Yes.
yeah, and I'm so
Yes.
grateful for you sharing your beautiful story
Thank you.
and what you've done and how inspiring that is to all of us.
Thank you.
For all of us, and especially those who are living the conditions and want to love their family and want to love their parents. And how do you do that
That's right.
during this time? And yeah, I'm so grateful for you joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for all
Thank
that you're
you.
doing to raise awareness. Thank you.
Oh yeah, just getting started. Yeah, I started like starting over at 60. That's my thing. Yeah,
Never too late.
and that's a good.
That's a
Yeah.
good thing. Yes.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing. Yeah. Well, thank you all for listening. I so appreciate you hanging on to the end because this is such an important discussion today. And it is just, it's really a life and death. And what do we do now? So I'm looking forward to the comments here too, Amy, and some direction because I think somebody might hear this and go, I know what you can do. And then like, yeah,
So,
you know what else we can do. So thank you so much. Take care,
my
everybody.
pleasure. Thank you.
Bye-bye. All right. Oops, I don't want to end it. I just want to stop the